Excuse me, everyone. Sorry that dinner took so long, but we're getting to the point where we're expected back. We've extended the timer of another 5 minutes, but we're hoping that you can finish up and make your way back.
Hey, check. Check, check. Check, check. Check, check, 1, 2. Check, check, 1, 2. Check. Here we go. Check, 1, 2. Hey, check. Check, check, check. Check, 1, 2. Test. Hey, check. Check, check.
I'm a so you need hello anytime. I'm a so you see anytime. You need anywhere anytime. I'm a so you need hello anytime. Okay, so you need hello anytime. I'm a so you need hello anytime. Say so you need hello anytime. So I see you hello anytime. Be ready for a car now. A piece of local picture and present. Sound we are standing on holy ground. We are standing on holy ground. God has called us, we're journey bound. Standing on holy ground. In God's presence we gather together, and given the challenge to grow, we open our hearts as we worship and work to find where God wants us to go. We are standing on holy ground. We are standing on holy ground. God has called us, we're journey bound. Standing on holy ground. We remember Christ journeyed before us, and we need not fear the unknown. God is our guide from beginning to end. Our journey is never alone. We are standing on holy ground. We are standing on holy ground. God has called us, we're journey bound. Standing on holy ground. Holy Spirit, direct and unite us. Fill us with worship and praise, that we may act upon God's call to service and joyfully live out our days. We are standing on holy ground. We are standing on holy ground. God has called us, we're journey bound. Standing on holy ground. We are standing on holy ground. We are standing on holy ground. God has called us, we're journey bound. Standing on holy
Thank you very much. The music is just so lovely. It's such a pleasure to gather and sing together and be here together. Hello, everyone. We're going to get going. Okay, so it's my privilege to be able to introduce the Right Reverend Carmen Lansdowne, Right Reverend Dr. Carmen Lansdowne, my apologies. Carmen identifies as mother, spouse, friend, and ice cream critic. Oh, and she's also the moderator of the United Church of Canada. Instead of listing all the wonderful things of which Carmen Lansdowne is capable, it was deemed prudent to include the shorter list of things that she isn't doing. She is unable to maintain a healthy sleep schedule and walk downstairs These are both areas where, tragically, the moderator comes up below average. One disgruntled United Church member, her son Gabriel, shared that her greatest weakness might be staying home. Ouch. Other than that, however, she's got just about every box checked. Carmen is the first Indigenous woman to hold the role of United Church moderator, has attended school longer than most youth and young adults have been alive, and has been praised as incredibly talented churchy person. It's been rumored that she recently took a consultative role with NASA's Lazarus Project initiative and worked undercover in the San Pedro Alligator Wrestling League for 7 years, but you might want to fact check those last two. These are just of the few of the outstanding feats Carmen has accomplished over her life, and if they are any indicator, the church is blessed and gifted with her ministry. All in all, Carmen is an intelligent, wise, educated, versatile, sharp-tongued, strong, swagger, funky-licious moderator who is absolutely goated with the sauce. If anyone would ever hope to bribe her, definitely avoid bringing Carmen fancy ice cream, as she will ravage your ego and destroy your soul, or at least tease you for liking bougie ice cream. In all seriousness, the Reverend Dr. Carmen Lansdowne is moderator of the United Church of Canada and will conclude her term in August of 2025. Following her 3-year elected term, she will serve as assistant professor of the United Church of Canada Studies at Emmanuel College, Victoria University in the University of Toronto. She holds a PhD in interdisciplinary studies from the Graduate Theological Union and is an ordained minister in the United Church of Canada. In addition to her ministry, former moderator, your bio is out of date, or in anticipation, I guess, has served several nonprofit and social profit organizations, including as Director of Operations at Action for the Climate Emergency and Eco-Justice Canada, and as Executive Director at First United Church Community Ministry Society. She also serves as a social impact advisor at Jumpscale, a boutique consulting firm in the US, providing advisory and coaching services to help impact leaders navigate organizational change and sustainable growth. When Carmen was talking to me about being willing to offer her flourishing workshop here in Chinook Winds region, we were discussing dates and struggling to find one that worked that wasn't too close to the regional meeting. And then we thought, well, how about we just do it with everyone? And so that's how we came about inviting Carmen to be our theme speaker. We're incredibly gifted to have her with us and have this opportunity to work and learn about how to be a flourishing church going forward. And I know Carmen has been on the road a lot, and so we really appreciate her wedging us into her schedule in order to be here. She was home for about a day and a half from her last trip before she had to get on a plane and come back here. So thank you so much, Carmen, and I still won't apologize for suggesting you become moderator.
Thanks, Trina. Hello, everyone. It's my really deep pleasure to be here with you. I think this is sort of I've been in Chinook Winds region quite a few times. I joined the Pacific Mountain Chinook Winds Youth Council meeting in 2023 and have been here quite a couple of times for general council planning, but this is my first time engaging with your whole regional council, and I'm grateful to be here. I also feel like since the inauguration of the current administration in the United States, there's been a lot of elbows up like Canadian sales, and so our theme time for this regional council meeting, you get a Canadian 2-for-1 sale, because actually I always co-facilitate the workshop with the growth and ministry development team from the general council offices, and so my good friend and colleague, the Reverend Cam Fraser, and I are going to do this together as we normally do. So I'm not going to add anything else to what Trina already said in my intro, but I'm going to invite Cam to come up and just briefly introduce himself and his role.
Thanks so much for having me here. I'm thrilled to be with you all. My name is Cameron Fraser. I'm still a little baffled to say this, but I work for the General Counsel Office as the Director of Growth and Ministry Development. I do that work from Regina, Saskatchewan. So all know that I have truly made an impact on the church when we no longer hear Toronto doesn't understand the rest of the country, and we start to hear Regina, Saskatchewan does not understand the rest of the country. Incidentally, one needn't spend long in Regina, Saskatchewan to know that is already the case. But I do love it. I came to that role just about 2 years ago after 14 years in congregational ministry, first in a new church development, church planting project in southern Ontario, and then most recently 9 years of congregational ministry in downtown Regina. During both of those times, I was privileged to get to job share as congregational minister and also camp director at local United Church camps. And one of the great joys of this work has been to work with Scott Reynolds, the growth animator for these two regions, as well as the moderator in these projects. And I get to say more to y'all later. Thanks for having me.
So just a quick note about our, can we put the slide up for a second with just the agenda? Yeah, perfect. So normally how we facilitate the Flourishing Workshop is it's just like 9:30 till 4 or 4:30 on a Saturday. But we've broken it into 4 chunks, and they're about an hour and a half each. So tonight's focus is going to be on the theme you heard from the opening worship tonight, which is Hope is Productive. Tomorrow morning, we're going to talk about living in a chaotic world. Tomorrow afternoon, we're going to play a game about turning the world upside down. And then on Saturday morning, you're going to do some work about the things that you heard in worship today about actually making some plans that will make your hope productive. So I created this workshop with 2 friends, Marie McDonald and Maggie Roach Black. The 3 of us met when we worked together at a design thinking company that taught kids and educators to envision and create a better world. And we saw this as a continuation of that work. And now we are focused on human flourishing and how futurism and productive hope can inspire tangible action in our lives, in our communities, and in our world. And for me, the primary place to have that conversation was in the church, at least for now. And so we were developing this workshop at the same time as the General Counsel offices were hiring Cam, and Jennifer Henry, Cam's boss, who's the Executive Minister for Organizational Development and Strategy, and I were talking, and I was like, well, this actually would be really great if the ministry and the Growth and Ministry Development team would partner with us to do the workshops, because then when people leave and they're inspired and they have these like tangible plans for things they might want to try differently to help their communities flourish, then there's a point of contact. And so we decided that it would be a joint project that would live in the Growth and Ministry Development team, even past my term as moderator. And so at various times, either Cam or one of the growth animators has co-facilitated the workshop with me. Scott did it with me in Burnaby last year. And and then last weekend, Jordan Cantwell and I did it together in Edmonton, because she is the growth animator for Living Skies region, and we actually had a hybrid workshop for the first time ever. So it was a little bit of practice for having it happen in the hybrid format tonight, or this weekend. And we actually recorded that session, and so we're going to make it into an evergreen resource that can live on ChurchX. And so it can be something that congregations can use, because all of the sort of content is recorded, and then the steps for using the workbook are all going to be there and live in ChurchX, which feels really good to me. It also feels really good to me that we're really good at sharing leadership in the United Church, and so I've been really pleased to work with Cam and the team. So that was the 4 of us. Marie's the one with the big bloom of flowers on her head. It was going like that. So in addition to Marie, Maggie, Cam, and the growth animators, this project would not have happened without the wider communion of saints in my world. And so I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge many of the folks who were involved in dreaming up this idea with me, helping to design it, and provide the support or infrastructure behind it. These are some of the best people in the circles that I gather in that were part of the start of this work. And there are so many people in the General Council offices, especially Rhonda Parks, our Director of Communication, and our Regional Council executive ministers who have worked really hard over the past couple of years to make this happen. So I'm going to invite Cam to come and talk a little about what we're going to be about over the next 4 sessions.
We already heard a phrase that's you're going to hear repeated throughout the time. Hope is what? Hope is productive. A lot of this material is built around a conviction. And we heard a lot of that expressed so beautifully today, that hope involves choices, that hope involves action, and that hope is productive. That hope is particularly productive when it teaches us to dream in a way that inspires tangible action. When we can turn hope from a feeling into bold ideas. And that hope can strengthen the fabrics between people. That hope can build belonging. That hope invites us to be daring and sometimes requires us to be daring and to make connections that perhaps feel uncertain. And hope is ultimately productive when it creates a purpose. And we're going to get to engage in those in table groups and through some content throughout the course of these sessions.
So normally we would talk about why people might have voluntarily registered to come and participate in the Flourishing Workshop. You are participating in the regional council meeting of your region, and the Flourishing Workshop as theme time was not necessarily your choice. But I hope that as you've heard through social media posts or things that were happening in other regions, that you were at least a little bit interested in what is the moderator talking about when she's doing this Flourishing Workshop. You might not know anything about it, and whatever your starting point is, we're going to spend some time over this next 3 days talking about a future with more human flourishing. And so when we're in theme time, I'd like to invite you to just be fully engaged with the work that we're doing. So I'm going to invite you, and this is good for even just being present in the regional council meeting, to take a moment to just identify anything on your mind or in your heart that might distract you. Worries about a looming deadline or a houseplant that needs watering if you had to travel and stay here, but a family member who might be unwell. Let's just say we're going to set them all of those worries and distractions just underneath the red dress on the stage. Just mentally put them there. And on Sunday, after our celebration of ministry service, you can pick them back up. Because we want you to be able to participate fully with your full self. We also normally would ask people to turn off notifications on their phones, with the caveat that if you have a dependent who needs to get a hold of you, whether that's a parent or a family member or a child, we want you to keep your notifications on, because we don't want you to be distracted by the fact that you're worried about whether or not you're missing a call. And we know that you can't participate fully if your needs aren't met, and so please take care of your own needs today. And any time that we're in theme time, we will not be going the full day, so it might not necessarily feel as challenging as being like in an 8-hour drinking from the water cannon of the moderator's words. But if you need to get up and stretch your body, or just pace at the back of the room, or take a bio break or whatever, then feel free to do that. You also have a workbook at your table, and that is yours for you to keep. We are not going to go through almost 40 pages in the workbook. There are portions that we will do together over the next 3 days, and then is homework for you to do if you feel so called. And then our final open invitation for you today is to expect and accept disagreement. We're going to be discussing content over the next 3 days that might feel personal or important or sensitive. You might have a radically different perspective on something than someone at your table. And that's okay. In fact, it's great, because one of the best ways that we learn is to have our perspectives widened by other people's, and especially when they're sharing dissenting opinions. And so we ask you to create and hold safety for dissent and disagreement, and also for making mistakes. One of the things that I have loved about this project is I feel like as a denomination, we have come to a place, maybe because we're so, the potential decline and the real decline of the church is so much in the forefront of our minds all the time, that when we're trying new things, it feels really precious, right? Like there's not enough resources, there's not enough finances, there's not enough volunteer hours, and so to make a mistake feels really scary. And one of the things that Marie and Maggie and I had kind of envisioned was that this workshop could be available for free to the church, but we were also going to twin it with an invitation to the Chamber of Commerce in the different cities where we went to invite the business community to come and do this. And we would take out, this also isn't like a particularly churchy workshop. I'm not going to talk a lot about biblical reflection or theology, because those are all strengths that we have in the church. Like we do Bible and theology and worship really well. But we wanted to help people to stretch their minds and develop their imagination muscles in a way that maybe we haven't had the opportunity to do in quite some time in the church. But that also requires failure, right? It's like that quote from Thomas Edison, like, I haven't failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that don't work yet. And so one of the things that I loved about the way that we planned this was we were thinking Marie and Maggie would come and we would do, the three of us sort of as nonprofit, social profit leaders, engaging the business community in how can we work collectively for our communities or our country or the planet to flourish. And then that income from that would also help to pay for the church workshop. And what we found was we don't have the connections mostly across the church anymore, I think because so many of our members are retired, that when we were asking lay people and ministers in the regions where we were going to help to invite people from outside of the church to engage in this conversation, we didn't have the brand awareness on our own for people to be interested in what we were doing, and we didn't have the social capital to have people take us up on the invitation. And so I said, how fabulous. That didn't work, and now I can model failing forward and what it looks like to take a chance on something, but then also not throw good money after bad and say, okay, that part didn't work, we're not going to do that. And the end result was that the workshop has still been really well received in the church, and that's enough for me for now. And so I am always wanting to highlight the ways that disagreement and dissent can foster learning, but so can we also learn from our mistakes. And so I learned a really important thing about where the church was at. I think I covered everything on this list. I think I did. All right, I'm going to invite Cam to come back up.
We've already had some opportunities to meet the other people at your table. And you're going to get a little bit more time right now around some particular questions that are going to help root some of the conversations around flourishing. So I think we've got a slide with those questions that we're going to invite you to think about. So you've already had an opportunity to talk about your name, your pronouns, your role in your community of faith. And had this been the standalone workshop, we would have asked you to say, what caused you to register for this workshop? Your service to the church as part of the regional councils was caused you to register for this part. But what we are going to ask you to do is to think about this. What do you appreciate most when you think back about your 8-year-old self? maybe 7, maybe 6, but your 8-year-old self, if you think back to who they were, what do you think about? And what about that makes you smile? What do you appreciate most about yourself now? And when you imagine your future self, and you're going to have to decide for yourself what that is, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 74 years from now, what do you imagine your future self? And this is all laying foundation for some of the things we're going to talk about in a little bit. I think, are we giving 15 minutes?
We've got 8. No, we can do more. We've got 8 people, so 24 minutes?
24 minutes?
And then give 3 minutes each, because that's a lot of questions.
We're going to invite you to take 24 minutes, and I think we're going to have a timer up to guide your way along. And maybe we invite you to take the first couple of minutes of that to sit with those questions and to think for yourself, how would I answer that to the people around my table? Hopefully, that sounds like an okay way to spend the next 24 minutes of your future. Let's get a timer up there. As you think about yourself, what did you appreciate most about 8-year-old you? What about today you would you name as something you appreciate the most? And when you imagine future you, what do you hope you can say about future you that you would appreciate the most?
I did, yeah. But it's just like the... No, it's because you just couldn't see it because it wasn't up.
Yeah, this is here. And then the slide, when you're on the screen, the slide. Oh, okay, the slide. Yeah, and you can see it in your corner.
I think just at that point, there was just the other side. Yeah. Oh, no, I knew that the green button.
Yeah, if you switch it, you see it switch, we'll put it up too if you'll have it.
All right, you have a couple seconds left to finish up. All right. So you've had a chance to introduce yourselves, and so I'm going to introduce myself. This is me and my family, my daughter Esperanza and my husband Mauricio and our son Gabe. That was taken on my birthday in 2022, so it's a couple of years older. Gabe's going to be 15 next month, and Esperanza will be 13 in October. I have already had a pretty significant introduction, but what I appreciated most about my 8-year-old self, I was born on an island called Cormorant Island, which is where the town of Alert Bay, British Columbia is, off the northeast coast of Vancouver Island. All right, at least somebody in the room knows where that is. It's the island where my father was born, and it's across the Johnstone Straits from the mouth of the Nimkish River, where my grandfather was born on a homestead, and it's part of the traditional ancestral and unceded territory of the Namgis First Nation, some of the northern Kwakwaka'wakw peoples of northern Vancouver Island. And when I lived there, my grandpa Edgar Lansdowne, was my very best friend. And we used to, I was fully Gen X kid for some of the years I was there. We didn't have cable, so like Sunday nights we got to watch the Disney movie with the rabbit ears and the tinfoil on our TV, and I spent a lot of time outside in the woods. I was one of 3 girls my age on the island, and we played a lot of Star Wars in the woods. We made tree forts and tree swings and ate salmonberry shoots, and we picked limpets off the beach and boiled salt water on a fire that we'd make on the beach and eat shellfish that was dubiously cooked by us as 8-year-olds. But my grandpa and I used to he taught me to cook on a gas stove or propane stove in his camper when I was 5. He taught me to make bacon and eggs. And so we decided that we were going to tackle baking. And we would just experiment and make up our own recipes. We didn't have any cookbooks. He lived in an old float house that he'd towed up to the top of a hill and built big timbers underneath it that were a sort of semi-enclosed basement that was really just his wood storage area, and there was a wood stove down there. That was how he got his heat and hot water. And he had a propane stove in the house and one light in each room. And we would make these recipes, and so we made this nutmeg coffee cake that we really loved, and we thought we had perfected it. So we were like, oh, we should invite Dolly my mom, down for tea with us one day, and we'll have this nutmeg coffee cake. But because my mom was coming, my mom is an excellent, excellent cook. My older brother had his Red Seal chef's papers, and he was competing with my mom. And so because Dolly was coming, we wanted to make it special. And so we decided that we needed to decorate this nutmeg coffee cake. And so we made one of the other things that we knew how to make, which was only slightly charred popcorn popped on the stove with oil. And so we put that on the coffee cake. And then we thought, well, it should probably also have icing. So we went down to the store and we bought a bag of Rogers icing sugar. But we didn't know how to make icing, and so we just guessed, and we mixed it up with some butter and then cracked an egg in it and whipped that all up. And we drizzled the sweet egg yolk with the chunks of butter in it, because we also didn't have any electric hand mixers or anything like that, so we just did it with a fork. And then drizzled that over it and told Mom to come down for coffee. And so when she bit into our delicious nutmeg coffee cake, all she tasted was sweet raw egg. And that was that was my earliest memory of failing forward in a really public way. What I appreciate about myself now is Trina knows this because she sits on the board of First United and has, before she was executive minister, she was also the person who helped me with my discernment and career path within the church. The first 3 times she asked me if I would let myself be nominated for moderator, I said no. And all of my, I was ordained to further study, so I was ordained and then did a THM at the Master of Theology at the Vancouver School of Theology, and then I did my PhD in Berkeley, and then I worked for environmental nonprofits for 6 years. I think I was 6 or 7 years before I started at First United, and so the way that my ministry has gone, it's not been focused around worship or congregational ministry. And something I didn't anticipate in my time as moderator is I've really deeply reconnected with my own sense of call as a minister of word, sacrament, and pastoral care. And that really started with serving communion, when I would either co-preside or just participate in serving communion when I was in different worship settings across the church. And that's been a huge blessing, and that's one of the things I appreciate about myself now. And what I appreciate about my future self is, as Trina mentioned, in the new year, I'll be joining the faculty at Emmanuel College as Assistant Professor of United Church of Canada Studies, and eventually directing the MDiv program at Emmanuel. And so I just feel like it's going to be such a blessing to have had this experience of being moderator, and including the other part of the Flourishing Project that we do is a leadership development program that I partnered with the National Church for. Mian is one of the folks from this region. Actually, you're the only one from this region, yeah? That participates, yeah. She's part of a cohort of 30 folks that we're willing to commit at least another 10 to 15 years in service of the church. And between what we've been learning together, my own experience outside of the church, and then what I've learned about the church, and then working in partnership with the National Church to be able to answer my original call, which was to teach theological education. I'm really excited about that for my future self. So I'm going to invite Cam to come up and introduce himself more fully.
So I said before that my role right now is the Director of Growth and Ministry Development. And we're at this moment within the United Church of Canada, when you have the word growth in your job title, it occasionally raises some eyebrows when you walk into meetings, and it occasionally provokes some feelings. About 2 years ago, when I was in congregational ministry, this position that it would happen was announced, and someone sent me the job posting. I thought, oh, that's going to be interesting. We'll see how that goes. And then this shocking thing happened that I started to feel that perhaps I might want to apply to do that job, and put my name forward for discernment, and then was offered the opportunity to do that. And my thought changed to like, well, whoa, this is going to be interesting. And the word growth provokes some feelings, but also maybe some longing. One of the things I've loved about these workshops as we've engaged with folks in different spaces is the opportunity not just to change what we talk about, but to try some really intentional ways to think about how we talk about the things that we do, how we talk about our world, our lives, our communities of faith, how we talk about our neighborhoods, how we talk about the people amongst whom God has placed us. Now, a couple years ago, the Regina International Airport updated its parking machines. And I thought this was a bit of a shame, because before that, paying for parking at the Regina International Airport was one of the most life-affirming and hope-inducing things that you could possibly do in a day. Because if you paid for parking at the Regina International Airport, you were going to pay about $2.50 for parking, which is an excellent deal for parking. But if you were going to give the machine $5, it was going to give you $2.50 back. And the way it indicated this to you is that the little LED screen would light up and it would say, "Change is possible." And I think it's fundamentally different when we speak about what we believe. When we think change is possible, then when we think everything is going to stay the same. To me, when we speak in a new creed of a God who has created and is creating, we're seeking to do something like that. And when I think about my own life through a lens like this, and when I think about the place that I live and the world that my children will inhabit after I am gone, this makes a lot of difference. 8-year-old me loved costumes. 8-year-old me loved playing dress up and imagining stories. 14-year-old me had deeply forgotten this. And when I was 14, my mom announced, much to my chagrin, that I was going to be a leader in training at a summer camp. And I argued, like I had a very, this was before kids did PowerPoints to argue, but I had a very convincing verbal presentation. And my mom, in deep compassion and wisdom, looked across the kitchen table at me and said, we drop you off at 8:30 tomorrow morning. And I was deeply concerned because the idea of speaking in front of people, the idea of being goofy, the idea of wearing costumes was really uncomfortable. I don't know who that guy up on the screen there is in an angel costume. When I was in university at Trent University in Peterborough, Ontario, I worked at the sports camp there, and I taught nature programming and mountain biking. And when we were teaching mountain biking to young kids, there was one skill in particular that we would teach. It's called tracking. And in the skill of tracking, you look at a particular stretch of trail that you're going to bike along. And the campers are taught to identify the obstacles. Like there's a branch over there, there's a rock over here, there's a stump over there. And instead of focusing on the obstacle, you instead look about where you want to go. Because if you are mountain biking, and if you are thinking to yourself, don't hit the rock, don't hit the rock, don't hit the rock, don't hit the rock, my friends, you are going to do one thing and one thing only. What do you think you're going to do? As a church, we are facing so many difficulties, both internally and externally. And I think that how we look at things and what we make as our primary focus matters a lot. When we focus on what we don't want to happen, versus when we focus on what we think might be possible. It doesn't mean that you ignore the challenge. You know where the rock is. You know its contours, you're understanding, and you're going to adjust for it. But when we see the world in relation to what we don't want to happen, the way we approach it and the anxiety that we come makes a lot of difference. One of my favorite futurists that I follow and think about, the Right Reverend Dr. Carmen Lansdowne, says, we do some of our best work, not when we are trying to solve a problem, but when we are working towards a goal, a way of living, or living out our call. My future self really wants to teach grandchildren, if I happen to have them, how to cross-country ski. So current me is making sure that relationships with the potential parents of those children are in such a space that they would want that, and that the body that I currently occupy has the capacity to do it or to plan how I would adjust otherwise. One of the great joys of this job also is to get to work with a group of 6 fabulous human beings who are deployed throughout the church. One of them who is here right now, and I'm going to introduce Reverend Scott Reynolds to introduce himself.
Yes, well, the picture that you see up on the screen before you is like a very formal picture of my family. There were 2 choices. There's this one, and then there's the one with me and all of my children going all at the same time, which is a delightful image as well. But that's my wife Samantha, and my daughter Sibylla, and my son Sebastian, and myself, of course. I'm the growth animator for the Chinook Winds region, and when I think about my 8-year-old self, one of the things that I appreciate most is this penchant I had for curiosity and community. My 8-year-old self was deeply curious about the world and curious about people. I loved learning something new. And I loved applying that knowledge in new and interesting ways. One of my mom's favorite stories about me as an 8-year-old is when my Uncle Jim took me to the pet store just to kind of look at all of the different pets. And I was looking down at one of the dogs very, very intently. And my Uncle Jim said, "You look like you're getting pretty attached to that dog." And I said, No. I can see that newspaper is 3 days old by the Blue Jays score. There's something delightful about being able to apply the knowledge that you have come to learn when you're young. I also remember going to my neighbor's home. They were both anthropologists, and they had long since retired. They would read me books about dinosaurs if I brought them over, and they would also tell me the various stories about all of the things that they had purchased from different parts of the world. They helped to sow in me this deep appreciation for difference, to recognize that when we are curious about people, we come to know so much about them and about ourselves. When I think about my current self and try to think about what I appreciate most, the word that comes to me is faithfulness. I appreciate that I can be faithful in the midst of fears and failings. I appreciate that I can be faithful even when life isn't going according to plan. I appreciate that I can be faithful not only to God, but also to the people who make up my closest community. For me right now, there is a deep sense of call to be faithful in the church, but also to be faithful to the people that you see in that picture, faithful to the commitments that I have made to them. And when I think about my future self, that's really what I think about. I think about the commitments that I have already made. And I'm thankful for the gratitude and the grace that my future self will have for me now. Gratitude for those commitments that I made so many years ago that went splendidly. And commitments to people that I continue to be in loving relationship with. And grace for the choices that I made that were maybe not so good from time to time. Right? We want to know that our future selves will be gracious to us because we are making so many commitments on their behalf that they don't get a say in. And so for me, grace and gratitude. I appreciate it from my future self. I appreciate it as we live together in community.
How lucky am I that I get to work with these two and their colleagues. So I love to consider how our brains are, or how our beings are influenced by our mind and our brain science, and that's where we're going to end tonight. If you watched or participated in my installation service, I even preached about brain science in my installation service, which is probably an odd choice. But I think there are a couple of ways that brain science can help us to flourish. The more that we understand about the ways that our brains work, the more insights that we have into our strengths and challenges as people, in our communities and our workplaces. Any space where humans gather together, the more we understand about our brains and how we relate to each other and ourselves, the better we are. When we feel threatened, that generally short circuits our ability to flourish because it cuts off our access to creative thinking, empathy, innovation, and imagination, as well as skills like collaboration. So we want to share a short video that will show you what we're talking about. It's about how we can check in on our perceptions when there is either real or perceived risk, and how all of that affects our brains. Did I turn it off by accident? Nope, wait, there we go. There we go. Nope. Okay, I'm gonna let you do it, Alan.
Location, location, location. Brought to you by the Conscious Leadership Group. Find them on the web at www.conscious.is. Animation by Graham Franks, www.grahamfranks.com. One question that conscious leaders ask themselves over and over is, where am I? To support leaders in locating themselves as they ask the question, where am I? We offer this tool, a line, a simple black line. At any moment, all leaders and all people are either above the line or below the line. Our location describes how we're being with what is occurring in our life right now. If we're above the line, we are open, curious, and committed to learning. If we are below the line, we are closed, defensive, and committed to being right. Stop right now and simply ask yourself, where am I? In this now moment, am I above the line or below the line? Typically, when people are below the line, they believe certain things about the world. For example, they believe there is not enough. It could be that there's not enough money, or time, or space, or energy, or love. People below the line also believe that their story about the situation is right. People below the line also believe that there is a threat out there. Something or someone is threatening their desire for approval, control, or security. And people below the line see the situation as serious. The deeper below the line they are, the more serious things look. People below the line tend to behave certain ways as well. They tend to cling to an opinion, find fault and blame, gossip, explain, rationalize and justify, get overwhelmed, and avoid conflict or pursue conflict for the sake of winning. When people are above the line, they believe that learning and growing are more important than being right. They believe that all people and circumstances are their allies, here for their growth. They believe that from a distance, almost everything is funny. People above the line live in curiosity, listen deeply, speak unarguably, question all their beliefs, and live a life of play. Now, knowing what you know about being above or below the line, where are you? One thing to know as you consider this question: we are hardwired to go below the line. Literally, our brain is programmed to perceive threat, and when it does, a chemical cocktail courses through our veins, and we go below the line. This reaction was designed to help us survive in the presence of a real threat to our physical survival. An issue for modern-day leaders is that often our brains can't tell the difference between a threat to our physical survival and a threat to our ego or identity. We react and get defensive when we experience a threat to our ego. So in many ways, being below the line is natural and normal. But when we are below the line, we're not in a state, literally brain state, of high creativity, collaboration, innovation, and relational connection. We're simply trying to survive. Leaders today can't thrive if they're in survival mode. So the first activity of conscious leadership is location, location, location. In this now moment, where am I? Telling ourselves and others the truth about our current location begins the great conversation.
If you're thinking to yourself, goodness gracious, that would be a fabulous video to share with people in a community that I'm a part of, to send to some people who really get on my nerves, or don't do that. There's a resource section at the back that includes a code for this one. When we're not at our best, we're living below the lines. And one of the magical ways that our brain works is that sometimes simply acknowledging, like, I'm not me when I'm hungry, or I'm not working at my best right now. I'm living below the line. Like, that active engagement helps move our brains out of the limbic system, that part of us that the video talks about that is designed to respond to threat through fight, flight, freeze, fawn. That active act of saying, where am I, shifts us into the prefrontal cortex, which is where our executive functioning lies. And this is where our inspired action comes from, our thoughtful dreaming comes from. And this is where flourishing begins. And this idea is fundamental to responding to our world, to taking ideas into action in a more constructive way. And it's really what this whole workshop is based on. We want to give an opportunity before we close to think about this and respond for yourself. In your workbook on page 2, there's a number of questions there. And we're going to, in a moment, put a 5-minute timer up to give you time just for yourself. To think about what things, what people, what places, what situation help you stay above the line. You're going to be invited to think about how can you tell when you're above the line? What does that look like for you? Maybe there are habits or routines that help with that. Maybe there are people and situations that pull you below the line. And how do you know? What are the signs for you? And what has helped you stay above the line? You're not going to be asked to share these, although you're welcome to do so. So this is just for you to think about. And we're going to put 5 minutes on the screen. We're going to take the lead from the stage. And when that 5 minutes is up, I think there's closing singing, or if there was announcements first. We will leave and the singers will take over from there. Enjoy the next 5 minutes of your future.
just to be is a blessing. Just to live is holy. Just to be, just to live is a blessing, is holy. Be still and know I am God. In quiet and trust lies your healing. When you look, I'll be with you. When you look, you'll find me with you. Just to be is a blessing. Is holy. Just to be, just to live. Of mountains and hills, they don't worry or fret,
Yet they stand
upheld by God.
Yet they stand
Yet they stand upheld by God.
just to be
Just to be
is a blessing.
is a blessing. Just to live is holy.
Just to be
Just to be, just to live is a blessing, is holy.
That's great improvisation there. Well, we've come to the end of our first day already. It's amazing. Thank you so much, Carmen and group, for that great introduction to the topic. Looking very much forward to all we can learn about living above the line. I'm going to remember that for sure. Announcements, not many. Start time for tomorrow. If you look on your little back of your thing, what do you see? What does it say? 8:45? What's going to happen? Gathering music, and you won't want to miss that. So 8:45 tomorrow. I think that's all we need to know for tomorrow. It's back here. You know that, right? You all got your tables. Have a wonderful evening this evening. Is there anything else, Trina? Do I need to know? Uglies is the pub, apparently. Yes. Will there be coffee tomorrow? Yes.
Okay.
Pardon me? At break, there will be coffee. There won't be coffee when you get here, so make sure you tank up before you come into the room, right? Anything else that anybody wants to share? This has been a great day. Thank you all for coming. We will see you tomorrow, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. God bless. Peace.